Live now, and I'm going to record this as well. There we go. Hello everyone, welcome to another Inner Sanctum Sessions with Karen Swain, and today we're going to chat about the lessons in the Thiaoouba Prophecy, a book that was written in, when was it, Samuel?
In 1989.
89, the end of the 80s. So we're discussing it with Samuel Shen Chong today. Welcome to the show, Samuel. He's a very special guest in the Inner Sanctum. Samuel and I had a chat on the show as somebody just reminded me, it was in August last year. Wasn't that long ago, really, was it?
Right, just half a year ago.
Yeah. And so since then, you've been like flat out on other podcast shows, and I see that the boys from Journey to Truth have put you in a conference, and yeah, you've been flat out. Do you want to fill us in on, I have to read your bio, but do you want to fill us in on what's been happening since our chat on the show in August, like in the last 6 months?
Yeah, I mean, after I went on your show, I discovered that it's actually possible to be on a lot of other shows too. So I sent out a lot of interview suggestions to other podcasters, and some of them responded very positively. So since then, I've been on different shows, and I think the messages have to get out as soon as possible because we are facing a timeline, a deadline, and it really depends on how we respond to the situations we are all facing right now. The more people who read the book, the more people will be awakened, and they will likely to know how to respond to the tyranny and also the control of the media. So I think the most efficient and most effective way to make the world a better world is to promote the messages in the book. And this is what I've been doing right now.
Yeah, sorry, I'm multitasking. Yes, you have. You've been doing a fantastic job. Let me tell people who don't know who Samuel is and what we're chatting about today, a little bit about what's happening. So Samuel Shen Chong is a certified court interpreter, Chinese translator, and this is my bit, Samuel, Galactic Ambassador. Do you like that? Living in LA, instrumental in arranging for the Chinese publication of Michel Desmarquet's book, The Thiaoouba Prophecy, which came out in, well, it says the early 90s. Yeah, he wrote it in 89. And I think it took him about 3 years to write it and another 3 years to actually get it published. Anyway, the book talks about his adventures being taken to another planet. And on these other planets, on other planets, the universe, creation of the Earth, it talks about the history of Earth, the DNA of humanity, ET races, creating different human ethnicities on Earth, a dire warning for humanity, which is what everyone talks about, levitation, master healers, mystical animals, dolphins, and how life on planet Earth happened. The book goes into so much, but Samuel, you want to talk about, for people that haven't seen the show with you, do you want to talk about how you found the book and why you're the one that's, spreading the messages of the book now? And yeah, fill us in.
Yeah, I found the book back in 2014 or so, when I was searching for information and books written by ET contactees, because I was hoping that if we wanted to progress at a much faster pace, we could get a shortcut by learning from the ETs who have advanced civilizations. So I had been looking for a book like that. I thought if the ETs had more advanced technologies, they would unveil the mysteries of Earth, the paranormal, and also some of the things that we've been wondering about, such as the stories in the Bible and how we can really follow the right path and to reach our destination more directly. And so I checked out the book from a library through their interlibrary loan services. I was astonished by the content of the book because it answers all my questions at that time and even more. In the postscript of the book, it said there are more incredible things that the author, Michel Desmarquet, was not allowed to write in the book because we were far from understanding them. That got me extremely curious because I thought the book was already incredible enough. what's more incredible about it, that he wasn't allowed to write about it. I was very curious and I wanted to find out what. And so I decided to track him down, and I searched on the internet hoping that he was alive at that time. And indeed, he was alive, living in Vietnam, southern island in Vietnam. And there was a photo on the internet in which a tourist took of his bungalow where he was living at that time. So I printed the photo out and I flew to Vietnam and I showed that photo to the taxi driver after I landed on Phu Quoc Island. And the taxi driver took me there the second try. And there I met him.
Yes, you did. I loved that you said that you had no idea where he was, but you knew the island. And so you took the photo and you asked people on the island, do you know this man? Do you know this man? And some of them said no, and some of them said yes. So you tracked him down, which if any of you listened to the last conversation I had with Samuel, we spoke about how frugal he is. And I'm like, for a frugal guy, you spent all this money, catching a plane to Vietnam without any idea of that you'd find this guy. So there's a lot of passion behind you wanting to speak and find out more about this book and spread the messages. So when you tracked him down, what happened then?
So he was very annoyed at my visit because he was a very private person. I was asking all the questions regarding the book, and he was very annoyed at my questions, saying that you should read more time, one more time, read it one more time, read the book, he said that. And I was really puzzled. I thought, I came all the way from Los Angeles to see you and ask you all the questions that I had in mind, and you treated me like this, being very annoyed. What's going on here? But the day before I was about to depart, actually 2 days before, he showed me a contract, and he asked me to follow up with the Chinese publisher who paid him $2,000 for the copyright. It turned out that the publisher didn't want to publish the book because of the fear of the censorship in China. So Michel Desmarquet asked me to really find another publisher. And I was eager to please him so that he could reveal the secret. So I took that job and contacted as many publishers as I could.
Yeah, it's because there is a lot of censorship in China, which you would know about. Unmute myself. How did you get it published in China? Because how did you manage that?
Well, I contacted so many publishers in China, in Taiwan, in Hong Kong, and even Singapore. And no publisher was willing to publish the book in the very beginning because it contains information about religion. And in China, religion is actually a very sensitive topic. They forbid anyone to talk about Christianity. And this book speaks at length about the birth of Jesus and the coming of Christ. So people were very afraid of having the book published. In Taiwan, on the other hand, is a different issue about homosexuality. So homosexuality in Taiwan is a very sensitive topic. And publishers in Taiwan refused to have it published. So I contacted a very old friend of mine whose mother used to work at a major publisher in China. And then through her introduction and through her inquiries, the book was finally published in mainland China as a science fiction. And then later on, another publisher in Taiwan had it published as a nonfiction.
Oh, okay, I see. So it was published as science fiction. Yeah. Oh, what? Yeah. So you said that in China, people can't talk about Christianity. What is the major religion in China? What can you talk about? Is it Buddhism, and what is it?
Well, it used to be Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism. But after the Chinese Communist Party took over, they really didn't allow any religion to be discussed. Even for Buddhism, they only practice it superficially, like giving money donations and really just praying to the Buddha not really going to the essence of Buddhism, which is the inner peace and the inner realization.
Yeah, I forgot. I remember watching that movie about Buddha, about yeah, anyway, about the guy going to meet the Dalai Lama. God, what was that movie called? Somebody help me out. Anyway, and I remember the communist leader at the time. What was his name? Like not the one now, but way back in history, back in the 50s.
Mao
What was his?
Zedong?
Mao Zedong. Yeah, saying in the movie, "Religion is poison." I remember him saying that. Yeah. So right, yeah, they didn't let any religious stuff happen. Well, for people that haven't read the book, and there's quite a few people online that haven't, do you want to just quickly outline what is in the book and why it's such an important spiritual piece of literature? And I've got a million other questions, and I'm sure everybody else does too.
Well, the book writes about the author Michel Desmarquet's personal experiences of being taken by this group of beautiful, blonde, tall, 9 foot tall, compassionate and loving ETs to their planet for 9 days and then came back. It happened in June 1987. And the book speaks about the information revealed by this group of ETs who have been watching us and guiding us throughout history. For example, the ancient scriptures in the Bible write about the destruction of the 2 cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, and also parting the sea for Moses to lead the Hebrews out of Egypt, as well as the birth of Jesus and the coming of Christ. And this is actually, those are all interventions by the ETs who really try to help us, to lead us to the way, to the path of spiritual growth. It also unveils about the origins of different kinds of people, such as the black people, the yellow people, who came from the planet Baccaratini about 1.35 million years ago. Also, the functions and purposes of the Great Pyramid of Egypt, which is a tool to capture cosmic energy in order for the users to communicate with people on other planets, and also to explore parallel universe and to make rain, to moderate weather. And also what happens in the Bermuda Triangle, which is actually a warp or portal to a parallel universe that sucks people or planes or ships that got around it. And also talks about the recent interventions of the ETs, such as during World War II, they prevented Germany from being the first country to develop the atomic bomb. So in a sense, they helped the US government to stop the war, or to terminate the war much earlier than it would have happened if Germany or the Nazi government won the war. And it also talks about a lot of the ET technologies, how we can incorporate the different vibrations in the form of colors or sound or other kinds of vibrations to heal ourselves and to make us more healthier, as well as other kinds of technologies such as anti-gravitational technologies, supersonic vibrational systems, the one that they use to lift heavy stones to build the Great Pyramid, and that statues on Easter Island, the Moas. And also, it also asks us to wake up, to really look at what's happening around us, to really see what's going on behind everything. Do we really want to listen to the mainstream media, or do we want to really look at the root of the causes of everything? It mentions that there are financiers running everything behind the scenes, and how politically we can become a better world and to make us a better world. It also gives us a solution. And I think that's really applicable to what's been happening around the world in the last few years, is to wake up and to have a concerted action to really follow the steps of Gandhi in India, to use nonviolent resistance to rise up against tyranny. So I think this is a very interesting book that contains a lot of specific verifiable details that people can really explore further.
It does. It corroborates with a lot of what other people have been saying, throughout history. Ancient, historians that talk about ETs on Earth, and it corroborates with a lot of information that's out there, but also it brings a lot of information that is not out there, like the two Jesuses. Like, I have to say, I've been doing this for a long time. I had never heard that before, and so it surprises me that such information like that it's not anywhere else. So there's a lot of information that's not anywhere else. The corroboration with the information that is makes it feel more believable, but then the information that is not anywhere else makes you think, is it believable? I mean, it says in the book, you either believe it or you don't. There's no way to prove it. But the fact that nobody else has spoken about this planet or the people on the planet, except for Michel, like, did he say, when you spoke to him, as I said, I've got a million questions, but they're really more for him or for Tao, who is the guy, Michel's guide in the book, that other people had been given this information on Earth? I mean, surely you can't just give it to one man.
Well, that's a very interesting question. According to what I know, the information was only given to him. And the reason, I guess, is that they want to have a more complete book written on his personal experiences that people can really do additional research. For example, the two Jesuses, one Jesus, one Christ. People can verify such information by visiting Shingo Village, Japan, and to see whether there is a tomb of Jesus Christ in that village, Shingo Village, Japan, that National Geographic wrote an article about like a few years ago, after Michel Desmarquet published this book. And also people can still verify if there's another tomb next to the tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingo Village. And if they really want to verify additional facts or evidence, they can dig it out and to see if there's a bundle of hair of Jesus' brother. And so I think if people really are interested in having proof, they can do so by following the facts stated in the book. And regarding the one fact that Michel Desmarquet was not allowed to write in the book, I verified again and again with people who had previous contact with Michel Desmarquet, including Tom Chaco, Michael Meanwell, including his Vietnamese niece, Lily, and no one has that information because it is specific information. If they knew the information, they wouldn't have been so laid back in promoting the messages. It's the information that I learned from Michel Desmarquet that motivated me to promote the messages as soon as possible, because the information determines, our actions determine our future. We have to act now in order to change the future for the better.
So do you want to get more specific about what that information was? That, I think it was that dire warning that I spoke about in the intro.
Yeah, so according to Michel Desmarquet, he told me that Tao didn't allow him to put it in the book, and Tao didn't want him to tell anyone else. And Tao said that after he told me not to disclose it to anyone else. But what he didn't tell me was that he didn't say I couldn't write an article about it and reveal as many hints as possible and to make it out of a puzzle for people to ponder about. So that's what I did. So I wrote an article titled The Second Coming of Christ, so you can get a sense of what it is about. In the Bible, some passages are correct regarding the second coming of Christ, but most of them, including the majority of the content in the book of Revelation, is probably just the imagination or visions that may not necessarily be true. And also, I would suggest people to focus on the timeline. When the Jehovahans, when God took Enoch away, the book of Enoch, and Enoch was told to write a book. And so there's a book of Enoch. A few decades later, his great-grandson Noah was told to build an ark. And similarly, parallelly, Michel Desmarquet was taken away by the Thiaoubans, Jehovahans, and he was instructed to write a book documenting everything he saw and he experienced and he witnessed. And he wrote a book in 1989. Imagine what's going to happen a few decades later if you don't change.
Yeah, this is a prophecy that many people have spoken about. And I think I spoke to you about it last time on the show, that, you know, I've been speaking to people for like 20, 25 years, and many of them have been contacted by either angels or ETs or sort of spirit guides or ascended masters, somebody, and have said, you know, in the not too distant future, some of them like 70 years ago, 50 years ago, when they were children, they're in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s now, that, you know, in the future, if humanity doesn't change their ways, there will be this probable future where we will be wiped out and sort of the reset of humanity, because we're a bit like the Atlantean story, that greed and has become sort of too big a dominating vibration on your planet, and love and unity needs to take hold. Is that the information that you can't reveal, the same information?
Well, a lot of the masters say this. They say sometime in the future, but they don't have the specific date or time. And I think the important thing is to not focus on what's going to happen in the future, but what we can do now to change our ways and to wake up. And I don't know why, but I'm so privileged to be able to get access to certain information from Chinese whistleblowers.
Chinese
So
whistleblowers,
that's really like so interesting, because China is a country that is so huge, and the government lies all the time, and no one is able to get the truthful information out of China. But that whistleblower, who is currently living in New York, knows inside out about the Chinese government, and what he says that's going to happen or that happened in China has been kind of 85%, 90% correct most of the time. That's a very high percentage of accuracy. So I follow him. His name is Miles Guo, G-U-O, Miles, M-I-L-E-S. And I'm also very privileged to be able to translate another book written supposedly by the 41st degree of the highest chair of the secret society that was founded in Germany. Some people say it's the Illuminati, and here I confirm it is the Illuminati. I didn't believe Illuminati existed before I read or before I translated the book. I found the book because I was searching for ways or methods to see auras, the human energy field. And then there was a discussion in a forum that talked about it and mentioned about this book. It was originally written in German, so I thought I would need to read it anyway. Why don't I translate it into English? So I did. And it turned out that a lot of the things that mentioned in that book corroborates with what's happening now, and also some of the mysteries surrounding the secret societies. And a lot of accounts match between the book Thiaoouba Prophecy and that book, 334 Lies.
334 Lies. Is that the name of the book? Is it 334 Lies? Yes. Should you be revealing your whistleblower? Anyway, well, you have now, and we're live, so I can't take it back. But yeah, so China is really such a superpower, I think, because not probably because of their government, but because of the amount of people in China. It's such a huge population of humans on Earth. And so what is the role in China and our future as we evolve and move forward in history and ascend into the next evolutionary stage for humanity? What's China's role in that?
So I think if you really look at what happened in the past decade or so, the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, has been lying to its people and the world for a long time. So the fact that we got into so much turmoil in the last 3 years or so was mainly because of the Chinese government, secret programs, biowarfares. The Wuhan Institute of Biology has 2 sections. One is the civilian section, and the other is the military section. I was so fortunate to proofread another book written by the Chinese Liberation Army, a general level of director in charge of the biological warfare, that spoke about SARS about 20 years ago. The gist of the book is that SARS that occurred 20 years ago was actually caused by a man-made virus that kind of escaped from the laboratory. They were so concerned about it, and they thought that it would cause a prolonged panic in China and around the world. But the virus disappeared after 3 months. That got them to be very surprised, and they really was looking for a reason for that. And it turned out that man-made viruses do not survive long in nature because they just don't adapt to the environment of the host, meaning the human body. So same thing happening right now is that if you see different variants, those are intentionally released man-made viruses. So back to the role of China. So the Chinese government is collapsing right now, and the Chinese population is really not 1.4 billion. A lot of people died in the last few years. The real figure is 0.8 billion, much less than what the official government has been saying.
Wow.
And there's a small group of Chinese people that is waking up, trying to establish the new federal state of China. So I think this group of people is going to lead the way for new China to be born. And that's going to probably wake up a lot of parts of the world. And this group of people, they know what's going on, and they're against the jabs, the COVID jabs, and they're kind of like, I think, the future of China.
Wow. Wow, Samuel, that's fascinating. And yeah, fascinating, that information. Yeah, fascinating. All right, well, let's get back to the book. I could talk more about China. Does anyone have any questions about China while we're still on China? About no, anyone on the group, anyone listening to the live stream? Kristen, is there any questions coming in on Restream? Joanne says, hi, love this information, inspirational vibes, podcasting, been listening to previous episodes. Hi, Joanne. Yeah, so we'll get more into this a bit later, but, you know, in the book, it talks about how the humanity was seeded on Earth, and it talks about the black people and the yellow people. I love that. Coming from, it says it in the book, it's not me being, you know, not politically correct. Coming from, what is the name of the planet, Samuel?
Baccaratini.
Baccaratini, yeah. So a planet that was dying, is that what happened? A planet that was dying? Do you want to talk about that part of the book? What, you know, how humanity was seeded on Earth? And I forgot to mention in the last show is we spoke about this race of beings on a 9th category planet that Michel met, these 9-foot, and you said beautiful. And I forgot to mention in the last show, it's been mentioned all over everybody, that they were hermaphrodites. They were both male and female, which we'll talk about a bit later. But yeah, just fill us in on the part, like how humanity happened on Earth.
So the black people and yellow people were originally living on the planet Baccaratini, But at 1.35 million years ago, the core of the planet was cooling down. So when the core of the planet cools down, the planet doesn't have the electromagnetic forces to capture the atmosphere anymore. So without the atmosphere, people would not be able to survive on the planet. It becomes like a desert without sufficient oxygen. So they had to migrate to a different planet of the same category. So they chose Earth because Earth was also a Category 1 planet. And they explored Mars at that time. And Mars was also having a lot of life forms at that time too. But Earth was more preferable to them. So the Black people landed in Australia, and the yellow people landed in where Myanmar is now located. And so they encountered a lot of difficulties in adapting the local environment on Earth, having heavier gravity or stronger gravities on Earth than their planet Bakratini. And they also try to bring a lot of animals and plants. For example, they love kangaroos. And so they brought kangaroos, but they didn't have a lot of plants to feed the kangaroos. So they tried to bring like a plant that they used to feed the kangaroos from their own planet, but that plant had a lot of difficulty adapting to the local environment on Earth. So a lot of things like that. And the yellow people encountered issues such as yellow fever, and so did the Black people, and they help each other out by giving each other vaccines. So not all vaccines are bad. So this is about yellow and Black people. The Caucasian people came afterwards. They landed on the continent of Atlantis, and at that time it was colonized by a different group of people from Arimo X3. They are actually the people, the Polynesians, living on different islands in the Pacific Ocean, such as the Aboriginals of like in Hawaiian Islands, and also Maui or something like that. And the Jewish people came last, about 12,000 years ago, from a planet called Hebra. Hebra was a Category 3 planet. So the Jewish people have had a lot of problems kind of melting into the pot, so to speak, and explains why they have encountered a lot of difficulties and why they were the chosen people by the Jehovah's.
Yeah, it goes into it a lot more. But, you know, when we speak to our Indigenous First Nations people here in Australia, I don't call them Aboriginals anymore, because I spoke to Stephen Strong years ago, a couple of years ago, who speaks about a lot of the Indigenous stuff down here. And he said that to say Aboriginal is to say not original instead of the original people. So he now calls them the original people instead of the Aboriginal people. So there's many names like First Nation, Indigenous, but apparently anyone born on any land is Indigenous to that land. So I'm an Indigenous person, I'm Indigenous Australian. But anyway, they say we were the first people on Earth. And then you speak to the Asians, like the yellow people, and they say, no, our civilization is the oldest, we're the old. And so there is this sort of argument about who were the first people on Earth. Not that it really matters, but in the book, it sort of sorts all that out, right? I mean, the Africans from Africa, the First Nations, the original people from Africa, they say that they were the first on Earth. But I think that how did the Africans spread to Africa? Like, does it say that in the book? I think it does.
Yes, from Australia. So
from Australia. And I think it talks about why they look so different to the original Australians.
Yeah, because of the uranium content in the soil of Australia.
Okay.
When the asteroids hit Australia, East Timor, and they caused a lot of explosions, and the radiation caused the genetic changes of the indigenous people, the indigenous Black people in Australia versus the Black people in Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Christine says here, complete respect for Samuel, much love and gratitude for sharing your research and knowledge. So interesting. And Kristen, you said that it aligns with what you know about how the planet was seeded. Where did you get that information that you're blown away? Where did you get that information from, hon?
It was a knowing that I had 10 years ago in a discussion with my husband, and he was talking about the evolution of man and how they started in Africa. And I was like, that I've never believed that. And I've never believed that us as like the human form that we are, if it's survival of the fittest, we wouldn't lose our body hair and have to eat cooked food to survive, like things like that. And I remember that it hit me that different beings from I just knew all of a sudden that different beings from different planets seeded different parts of the world, and that's why we all look so different. And I just blurted it out, and my hubby was like, what, you're whatever, you're crazy. But I've always carried that, and I've mentioned it, and you just confirmed it for me. I'm blown away, so thank you. I can't wait to read that part of the book.
Yeah, she hasn't read the book yet. You've started it though, right?
All right. Yeah, it's just busy. So I'm excited. Thank you.
And Gloria, you said the same thing. You had the same knowing. Do you want to come on camera, honey? Can I pop you on camera?
Oh, I'm not showing on camera?
No, I mean on the live stream. I can see you, but people on the live stream.
Gotcha. Okay, I got you. Yeah. I remember even like being a teenager and thinking about that, and just thinking they must have come from, because just thinking about all the different races on this planet, and that they couldn't have really been derived from each other because they're so different. So I've always believed in, ETs and UFOs and all of that. So my teenage mind, locked onto the idea that they came from other places.
Yeah. I mean, this book confirms so much of our knowings, or so much stuff. Yeah, that it's bloody. I love this book. It's fascinating. I'm going to read it at least another dozen times. There you go. Thiaoouba Prophecy. I think that they don't pronounce th as th, like Tao is pronounced Dao. So it's like the Thiaoouba Prophecy. It's pronounced differently anyway.
Well, Thiaoouba Prophecy, I would say.
Thiaoouba Prophecy. Crikey. Thanks, Gloria. So there's another question here from iPhone. I don't know who iPhone, it might be Eris. Says Lemuria, ? Does it go into Lemuria? I think it does. What does it say about Lemuria? Do you want to remind us?
Lemuria was actually a continent that existed about 14,500 years ago in the Pacific Ocean. The people from Arimo X3 first came to Earth about 300,000 years ago, and they landed on the continent of Lemuria. And in the very beginning, they encountered the Chinese people in the northwestern corner of the continent of Lemuria, and they had a small war. And Chinese people were very suspicious, so they had a war. I know Chinese people. I'm Chinese. We are very suspicious in nature, by nature. So that's what happened. So the people from Arimo X3, they retreated back, and they established a base on the far side, the backside of the moon, so that they could transfer their people and materials like step by step, face by face. So that's why some people say there are alien bases on the backside of the moon. Yes, it does. And it confirms a lot of the speculations that NASA has been hiding a lot of information from us. That's true. And there were life forms on Mars too, but Mars was actually a dying planet too, when the core was cooling down. So when Elon Musk wants to send people to Mars and to establish like a colony there, I think he'd better rethink, because why do we need to go to a dead planet? Yes, so go back to the question, Lemurian. The Lemurians were actually highly civilized, highly advanced people in the past. But then the entire continent sunk into the ocean. And unfortunately, the Lemurians didn't pass their technologies to the people in other parts of the world. So the great technologies and knowledge were lost.
Yeah, this is another part of the book that does corroborate with a lot of the information that's out there about Lemuria and Atlantis. Yeah, I think that what I didn't know when I read the book was that the Lemurians were the Polynesian race, right? So they were a black race. They look sort of Polynesian, like the Maoris and Samoans and Fijians, and that sort of black look. I also heard, which it doesn't say in the book, that it was a matriarchal society. Do you know anything about that?
No, but they had a very, very interesting social structure in which money didn't exist. So people just took whatever they needed from the market, and everyone was so like altruistic and thinking about the community. It's like a communal society. I would love to have a matriarchy society, and I think women do a better job than men at running everything.
I think that, you know, as we evolve, it needs to be a more balanced, not matriarchy, not patriarchy, more sort of unified. But what does Anne say here? I hope that this book gets picked up by major publishers. The book felt valid to me. Yeah, well, I don't know about major publishers picking up the book. I think that it's up to us, and I think, you know, the people, like what we're doing now, and Samuel speaking on a whole lot of other podcasts and doing conferences. I think it's up to us to spread that message. Maybe it will get picked up by a sort of a more major publisher. What do you think about that, Samuel? About getting
I've been working on that, because having a major publisher publishing the book will solve a lot of issues or problems. They have foreign rights department, and they can get the books translated into different languages and published by different countries. But there are two obstacles, not mainly because of the content, but because of the fact that Michel Desmarquet already passed away. They need someone to promote the book, hopefully, and ideally the author himself. But he's passed already, so. And the
well, that's you. That's your job. You've taken up the mantle. You've taken the baton. He's passed you on the baton. There you go. It's funny that when you went to Vietnam to meet him, and he didn't really want to talk to you because he was a very private person. The story goes that, you know, he had the experience in the late 80s, published the book or got the book out in the early 90s. And apart from a handful of people that picked it up, most people thought he was, you know, batshit crazy. And so he had a lot of ridicule, which a lot of people in the spiritual community go through when we talk about these things, right? Everybody. I had an email from someone today that said, love your work and I love to donate to you, but I'm not out of the spiritual closet yet, but you make it sound so enticing to actually come out, which I thought was hilarious, the email today. Like, come out of the spiritual closet. But so many people are scared to talk about this sort of stuff because they're scared of the ridicule. So poor old Michel had a lot of people just tell him that he was lying, that he had a great imagination, he made it all up. And so he became very reclusive. He just at some point said, oh, forget it, this is too hard. And that's when he, I don't know, I think his marriage broke down in Australia and business, and he moved to Vietnam and remarried and established a little family over there and didn't really want to know about it. It's like, leave me alone, I did it. I did what I said I was going to do. I tried to promote the book, but leave me alone. And he used to like shoo people away. Like, yeah. Do you want to talk about, did he talk about that with you, to you?
Yeah, he really didn't reveal that he was having a major depression at that time. I learned it only a few months ago when a person told me that when a person was having a major depression, he would tell a lot of jokes. And this is what Michel Desmarquet did during my first trip and during my second trip. You know, after I I decided to please him and to follow up with the contract, his attitude changed. And he started to tell me jokes all the time, and especially during my second trip there. He told jokes in the entire trip, and just to hide his emotional depression feeling, and so he really wanted to leave this world. He didn't want to stay on Earth because he was shown like a paradise, a beautiful planet on the planet Thiaoouba, like a heaven. And then he was told, you don't belong here. You need to go back and write a book. This is how he felt, a very, very strong disappointment and really a cynical attitude towards everything that happens on Earth. And he really wanted to leave as soon as possible. He wanted Tao to take him away. But he also said, after he showed me the contract, he said that Tao told him that I was coming for him, but when I tried to ask him more information because I was very curious about my future, he didn't elaborate, and the fact that he passed away like 3 or 4 months after I visited him the second time shows that I think his mission had already completed. And now it's us. We have to really change our ways of living and to act together to change the world and to have a better future.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is a common story with a lot of people who visit paradises, whether that paradise is on another planet or whether it's an NDE and they go back to, what is called the spirit side or other dimensions, and they see just how great life can be when we're not living inside the circumstances that we're living here on Earth with, and then they come back and they have to sort of live out the rest of their life in these circumstances. But I think that being depressed and not wanting to be here does not help the rest of the people that are here, because that's a story about me, what I want. It's like me, my circumstances, and this life can be a paradise. You can create the paradise you want. I live in a paradise. You should see where I live. I mean, I live in the big fat city. I do live in Australia though. I've got the beach right next door. It is a kind of a paradise where I live, and there's more paradises on Earth. I mean, you can create paradise on Earth. Okay, there's a couple of questions here. Gloria says, is there an audio book available?
In about a month or so, we are working on that.
Okay.
I had a English person to read it, to make it into audiobook. I think when Americans listen to the British accent, they pay more attention because it sounds more sophisticated.
That's funny. I love that. That's quite cool. And Diane says that, did Michel lose contact with his spirit guides? Is that why he was so depressed? That's an interesting question, Diane.
I think so. I think he was kind of hoping to leave this world as soon as possible, to complete his mission as soon as possible. And I think he was still trying to promote his book. There was a couple, a French couple who visited him by chance, didn't know about the book, and he tried to talk to them about his book, but the French couple didn't seem to be interested, and he got really annoyed and frustrated. He says to me, Samuel, you see, this is what French people are like. They're just so arrogant and so ignorant about things like this. They don't care about this. So he was really, really frustrated at people not paying attention to what he experienced.
Oh, sorry, I muted myself. It's really interesting. In my audio podcasts, the biggest, because it says on the demographic, on the statistics, the biggest audience I have is French. So him saying that French people don't care about that, I think they do. I mean, I don't get any emails from them anymore, but years ago I did. I used to get a lot of emails from French people. But when I look on the statistics, where I, host the audio shows, the biggest demographic is the French, and then the next is the Americans. On YouTube, my biggest demographic is the US, and Canada, and also France, and then Australia. But yeah, so the French are into it. You know, whether I don't know, why are they listening to my shows? Yeah, they're into it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we haven't got too many questions. Has anyone got any questions for Samuel at this point? There's Joanne sent a donation. Thank you, Joanne. Oh, that's so nice of you. But no questions from the YouTubers. Or Kristen, can you see any questions? Or people on Facebook at this stage?
I don't see any from Facebook.
Well, let's talk about Jesus. I loved what it said about the number of lifetimes we have to spend on different level planets. Ooh, yeah, that's a good question. Also, the comments, read the Bible, made a lot of sense. I have the book Cedars. So interesting to compare. Oh, who wrote Cedars, Anne? Where are you? You'll have to unmute. Who wrote the book Cedars? I don't know where she is. Where are you? You need to unmute. No. All right. Well, let's, Elaine. Oh, Pat says Elaine Denan wrote the book Cedars. Ah, interesting. Have you met Elaine? Elena Denan.
I've heard of her. I've heard of her, yes.
French girl. I love what it said about the number of lifetimes we have to spend on different level planets. Do you remember that information in the book?
Well, I can tell you this. Michel Desmarquet had 80 past lives. And he, on his 81st past lifetime, he was on Earth. And the highest category planet that he lived in was a category 7. Where he was a queen ruling a third of the planet, but he came down to a category 1 planet, which is Earth, for a very interesting reason. He violated one of the 10 commandments. So that's why, like, people can go up and can come down, and there are spiritual lessons to be learned in each of the lifetimes. So I think. It really depends on how we grow spiritually, how we purify ourselves. And I think some people choose the direct path, the shortcut, like me. And others, they want to try to spend more time on different categories of planets before moving up to the highest level. So it really depends on the free will of the people.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Karen, I have unmuted. It's Anne.
Oh, hey, Anne.
And I think they said 81 lifetimes on our category of a planet before you can move up. But I have the book Cedars. I'm just going to hold it up. I actually heard about this on that show where I found you. So Cedars is by Elena Danan.
Yeah, Elena Danan. Yeah.
Danan, okay.
Yeah. So many people have said, you have to get Elena on your show. You have to get Elena on the show. So I wonder I'll get Elena on the show. I'll get Elena on the show. I want to talk about the levels because I don't know. As I say, thanks, Anne. I have a lot of questions that I don't know that you can answer. There really would be questions for Tao or, maybe for Tao. And I haven't, psychically, I haven't had any connection with him or her yet. When I do think about his energy, her energy, it's hard to sort of call her hermaphrodite, their energy. Oh, there you go, their energy. I feel that it's more masculine. To me, that's what I feel. But Michelle said, they look so pretty. They're like pretty blonde and they've got boobs and they look. He thought that he was in a spaceship initially full of women, and then he said, "Why are there only women here?" And then Tao says, "Oh, because we're hermaphrodites. We're both male and female." So he recognized some energies feeling more masculine and some more feminine, but he kept referring to Tao as she in the book because he recognized her as a woman when he first met her. But the energy I feel is more masculine, funnily enough. With the levels, my guides had said to me that the levels are not dimensions. Do you have any information about category, planet levels, and dimensions? And then we're
I
going to talk
agree
about
with
deep.
your guide. I agree with your guide. They're not
Mhm.
dimensions. They're just, they may have a different, slightly different vibration, but they're not different dimensions.
Mhm.
I think if you really look into the book, you're going to see that the Jewish people, the Hebrews, came from a category 3
Category
planet.
3.
And they just behave more spiritually and in a more civilized manner, more peacefully. In the very beginning, the ancient Hebrews that first arrived on Earth, they didn't want to have any wars with the locals. And highly intelligent, highly smart. And so I think it's just the level of spiritual development that people have had. It determines what kind of category of planet that they can live on. And to that point, I think it actually explains a lot of uniqueness about the Jewish people in a very good way. If I ever people on Earth, I would look up to the Jewish people and not to have any discriminations or harsh feelings against them or jealousies or things like that. And also, I want to bring up another point is that I'm a very grounded person. And I studied economics at UC Berkeley, went to London School of Economics and studied economic history. I went to University of Carlos III, Madrid, and studied financial analysis. I worked as a paralegal, a journalist, and also a clerk at a bank. And now I'm a Chinese translator, a certified court interpreter, working for the court system, mainly interacting with lawyers and doctors and professionals. When I read a book, I look at evidence that we can relate to, that we can really explore further and to really prove or relate to that we can touch and see in our real life. For example, this book explains that the Great Pyramid of Egypt was actually built about 17,000 years ago by a very wise person called Thoth from Atlantis, using anti-gravitational technologies and supersonic vibrational systems to move the stones in a very, very unique manner. The Great Pyramid of Egypt was built over a 9-year period and to be used as a tool to contact people on other planets because they can capture cosmic energy. If other ET contactees, such as Billy Meyer, say that the Great Pyramid of Egypt was built by 40,000 slaves or maybe 400,000 slaves over like 40-year period or 20-year period, that doesn't really make sense to me. I mean, I'm a very logical person. It really doesn't resonate to what I think to be true. So when I read a book, I always look at specific verifiable evidence or facts that we can verify and explore further. For example, the tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingle Village was mentioned by no other so-called spiritual books. But it's mentioned and detailed and specifically and described at length in this book. And that really caused me a lot of interest because I can visit Japan to look it up. So this is what I really want to tell to the people who are into New Age books and lectures and is to really follow your heart, but at the same time, try to be a grounded person. Look at the foundations or facts that you can really verify. And also, I say the same thing to the scientists and professors in different colleges. I mean, a person's spirituality or spiritual growth has nothing to do with the credentials or the degrees that a person receives. A Caltech professor that communicated with me a few years ago didn't believe that Kurdian photography was real. That seems to me that even though he had this kind of professional credential, he doesn't have a soul that's mature enough to recognize that there are things that we can really relate to on the spiritual level. Technology that can increase that can really connect with spirituality. So I think we need to be at the same time a grounded person, but at the same time has some kind of spiritual awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. Hallelujah to that. Very well said. Thank you. Thank you, Samuel. Yeah, as regards to the category, so you said the Hebrew people from Hebra, the Jewish people, so we call them, came from a third category planet. So the categories were more about people's spiritual evolution and not their intellectual evolution. And do you think that the ninth category planet that was called Thiaoouba, I always get whatever it's called, is in the third dimension, is still in the third dimension?
I think they're in our dimension because it's a real physical planet.
Yeah.
Yes, a third, yeah. But they have far advanced technologies and they can look into the future. 100 years. Yeah.
This got me thinking, and we're going to get to Jesus Gloria, don't worry, but this got me thinking about, you know, what we talk about on this in the spiritual community out there on a million different podcasts and shows and teachers. We're all talking about ascending to the fourth, and people talk about the fifth dimension. And if we are a category planet, there is no way we are ascending to the fifth dimension because we haven't even ascended to the second category yet. Like this highly evolved, spiritual, you know, seemingly magical race of people that have powers of manifestation that are unbelievable are still in the third dimension. They're still physically focused people. What do you say about that? As I say, I've got questions that I need to ask Tao. What do you say? What do you think about that, Samuel?
Well, I think we got a lot of problems right now, the media, and that contribute to a lot of the issues currently being discussed in the spiritual community to the media. You know, I took a class called Archaeology Anthropology. So it asks us to really do research on the Mayan calendar, when everyone believed that according to the Mayan calendar, 2012 was actually going to be the end of the world. And that's actually caused by the media. The media's sensational news trying to say that the scary things. And I think we need to be a little bit careful about that because, you know, is sometimes people tell me this and the reptilians, and sometimes people tell me that the evil ET is controlling the whole world.
The evil ET is controlling the world, I know. Look, the mainstream media is not talking about, you know, ascending to the fifth dimension, I have to say, but a lot of spiritual people are. And if we are, we need to ascend to the second category first before we can even hope to ascend to the fifth dimension. Anyway, it's a bit mind-blowing. We've got a long way to go before we're ascending to the fifth dimension. We haven't even moved up to a second category. And as you say, the Hebrew people came from a category third planet. But so we know what a category 1 planet is because we live in it. And in the book, we visit a category 9 planet. So we learn about a category 9 planet. And I was thinking, what happens in between? You know, like there's a whole lot of steps in between 1 and 9. But it is about our spiritual evolution. Okay, there's a few things happening here. Movie industry have generated massive fear around ETs. Absolutely love what he said about money, drugs, journalism, and politics. Yep. Christine says again that she's a seeker of truth, and although it's not quite as focused, I appreciate your words on staying grounded. Absolutely. Individuals can be here on a mission. Did they say they have people here? Good question, Anne. Yes, they did. They said that there are people walking around as humans that are actually from their planet that are, what's their mission here, Samuel? What are they doing here on Earth? They're observing. They're not really teaching. They're more observing, right?
Yeah, they're observing and also helping us in secret. They don't want to reveal themselves when they're helping us. I'll give you one example. In recent years, how they helped us. It's mentioned in the book how they prevented Germany from being the first country to have the atomic bomb. They actually caused Heisenberg, a German scientist, to have this kind of illusion that a great amount of uranium was needed to build the atomic bomb. So it made Heisenberg, the scientist, believe that it would be impossible to do so because they didn't have such enormous resources. So he wrote a report to Hitler saying that, suggesting Hitler to give up the plan. And so Hitler relied on his judgment and gave up the plan. So this is kind of like a very indirect assistance, helping the US government to be ahead of Germany when developing the atomic bomb. So they did that in a very indirect way, not causing a lot of karma.
Mhm.
For example, if they took Hitler's life away, and that would cause a lot of karmatic effects. I'll give you another perspective. They respect the free will of the people very much, tremendously. All the people's free will, including Hitler's. So they respected the fact that Hitler wanted to do his own thing, follow his own agenda. The Thiaoubans, the ETs, are actually encouraging us to rise against any of the injustice, any of the tyranny on our own, and not to rely on their direct assistance, because they don't want to intervene or interfere with our own affairs that would cause serious consequences, or that would disrupt a person's free will. So it's up to us how we respond to the situations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they can influence, but they can't interfere. Absolutely, yeah. I wonder if they've done any influencing over that, because you talked about the Second World War, but that was a long time ago. Do you think that they've done any influencing over the last few, the decade or so?
I think so, especially in the last few years. It's just my suspicion, my conjecture, my guess. The person that I talked about, Miles Gore, he narrowly escaped many times the assassination or attempted assassination by the Chinese government. And I don't know whether it's the higher self, his own higher self, that helped. He's
protected.
Or from the protection of the Thiaoubans. I don't know.
Well, absolutely, because there's a lot of whistleblowers, talking about all sorts of stuff, not just life on other planets, but all sorts of stuff on Earth. And although there have been many have been taken out so that they've stopped them speaking physically, because they can still speak psychically to mediums that can receive the information, there seems to be less of that happening now. So there is more protection happening, either from their own spiritual family and guides or higher self, or maybe from not just the Thiaoubans, because there are many planets overseeing the evolution of this world. And people bringing technology to this world that will greatly influence humanity, healing technology, anti-gravitic technology. There's a whole lot of stuff happening. So I have heard about, in the last couple of years, some people that did invent some advanced technology in Africa that were taken out, unfortunately. So it's still happening, but it seems to be less. Have you got any intel into that, Samuel?
Well, I think those people, if they really want to be successful, they need to be more altruistic. So when they develop an engine that runs on water, by having a specific vibrational frequency that breaks the covalent bond between oxygen and hydrogen atoms, they should make the technology public immediately on mass scale, so that the special interest groups will not be able to silence them anymore. So I think, people are trying, and I'm encouraging a lot of people to do the same thing. I think it'll happen.
Yeah, I've had a chat to my galactic group about that, about free energy specifically, which I won't go into now, because I want to talk about Jesus, and I want to talk about technology. what was I going to say? God, I've got so many thoughts swirling around in my head. So as far as teachers and prophets go, there have been many prophets here on earth that have started religions: Muhammad, Buddha, Krishna. These are the main ones. And of course, there's Jesus. There's other prophets that are, there's other prophets, and but he was different. And like I'll let you explain who Jesus was, why he was different to other prophets or teachers, spiritual teachers.
Yeah, because other teachers, spiritual teachers, came from earth, but Christ, on the other hand, was actually one of the Thiaoubans who tried to convince people that by performing miracles, so that his teachings and preachings could be believed by the people, which focus on love and spirituality. And what happened was that in order to fulfill the prophecies, or the expectations by the Jewish people, Hebrew people at that time, they had to have someone born in a very unique and special way. So that's why they implanted the embryo into the uterus of Virgin Mary. So Jesus, the one who couldn't perform miracles, was actually born indeed from a virgin, just to fulfill people's expectations. Because a person is born that way, has to go through what they call river of oblivion, forgetting everything happened in his past lives and forgetting all the knowledge accumulated to perform miracles. Jesus, even though he was highly spiritual and highly intelligent, couldn't perform any miracles. So that's why there was no record in the Bible documenting Jesus performing miracles before the age of 30 or 28. That Jesus went to India. So there's some people who say that Jesus went to India and died in Japan. So there's a tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingo Village, Japan. Christ, on the other hand, was actually one of the Thiaoubans who took on the body of Jesus Christ made by the Thiaoubans, in order for people to believe everything Christ preached, because when the Thiaouban took on the body of Jesus, he remembered everything, remembered all the knowledge to perform miracles. So he preached everything and convinced people and died on a cross and resurrected 3 days after, just to show people that there's life after death and there's reincarnation. But somehow the concept of reincarnation got removed by the Catholic Church councils. And this book is so specific. It named the 4 Catholic Church councils that intentionally distorted the original meanings or the original scriptures of the Bible for their own purpose, their own benefit. So this book has so many specific facts that I strongly suggest people to read it in detail and do their own research, because you'll be enlightened.
Yes, sorry, I'm multitasking here. I'm sharing it on different groups. So the story of Jesus is that there were 2 Jesuses according to the book. I think I said this to you last time I read in the Seth books years ago, that the story that we know of Jesus was actually a combination of 3 different prophets, the one that is like written down in the Bible. But so that one was born of the Immaculate Conception because the ETs implanted the embryo into Mary that was an upgraded DNA to the physical body, but yet not sufficiently upgraded to overcome the river of oblivion, the veil, as we call it. I love the river of oblivion. So this man was highly spiritual, highly intellectual teacher who left and traveled the world and ended up in Japan. So that was one Jesus. But the Jesus known in the Bible as the one that was crucified, that performed the miracles, was actually a body manufactured in Thiaoouba, because they have, they're masters of manifestation. They have the ability to create bodies, human or otherwise. And that's why Michel said that when he was there on the planet, he saw very few children because they have the ability to just create a body at any age. And then the soul can incarnate into that body. It doesn't have to go through childhood, but then there is the freedom of being born. It doesn't actually talk about if they give birth the way we do. It doesn't talk about that in the book, does it, that you know of?
It doesn't, but he saw children, and children were born kind of very similar to us.
Yeah, so there is the opportunity to incarnate into a fetus, a baby, and then grow up, or to incarnate into a fully formed human. Like there's so many things on offer on this planet that a soul can experience. So that body was manufactured, and that was the body that came out of the desert, who was Jesus, that performed the miracles. So my question is, and I don't know if you can answer this, Jesus said, you all you can do what I have done and more. So if that is true, we can't, because we have human bodies that are under the river of oblivion. So therefore we can't perform the miracles that he performed. What do you think about that? That's what I'm thinking. If the body was manufactured so that it didn't come under the veil, it had full memory of who they are as spiritual beings, without any forgetfulness that we come under when we incarnate into this planet. What do you think about that?
I think Jesus or Christ is right that we can do everything that Christ did by performing miracles if we really focus on it. You know, after I came out publicly, a friend of mine, actually someone contacted me saying that he could levitate when he was young. By really kind of using a special ancient Chinese technique, fasting for a few days, and then just to make the meridians, the energy of the meridians flow, in a very, very like unique way. And then he was able to levitate, and he was able to see auras, and he had a lot of healing abilities too. So was the monk in Nepal, that as documented by Dan White, the magician. And there are also, like as I mentioned previously, the masters, the high level, the masters of higher degrees of the secret society, Illuminati. They can perform all the miracles too. I mean, they they don't use it in a very good way. They do it in a very negative way, but they could perform all the miracles. They can kill a person instantaneously using their mind. This is actually witnessed by a Dutch banker who used to work for members of the Illuminati. You can look it up, Ronald Bernard, a Dutch banker. And then he says that he witnessed like a person dropped dead after the member of the Illuminati used his mind to kill him. So this is something that's doable. It's just that how we achieve that. And this Michel Desmarquet, when he was on Thiaoouba, he told me that he kept asking Tao and their people, like, teach me how to levitate, and teach me, and then they just smiled at him and never responded by saying that if you are like this, like you would never be able to learn what we can do here. In a sense, they're saying that Michel Desmarquet was not too spiritually advanced or grown to a certain level to be able to do so. But I think this book tells us how to do that in a very, very direct way, which is by meditation and concentration. So you have to practice for a long time to achieve that, to recollect the past life memories, and to really not to think about anything, quiet your mind down, and then use your subconscious mind to focus and to concentrate on the goals that you're trying to achieve. I think that's the best way to do that. You know, I'm a talker. I'm not able to do that myself, but I'm just giving you some suggestions from what I learned from Michel Desmarquet and also from the book.
Of course you can do it yourself. Yeah, you said concentration, focus. Okay, I've just got some guidance on the question that I asked previously about categories and dimensions. So they said that there are many people, my mob, they said that there are many people here on Earth that exist in a different category to Earth. Like you said that the Hebrews, the Jewish people came originally from a category 3 planet. They said that many of the healers and star seeds that are here are existing in different categories, that you know, having different abilities, psychic ability and powers of healing and accessing different parts of the Akashic records and different levels of consciousness. But what they said to me was a planet's category is determined by the dominant state of consciousness of the planet. So the dominant state of the consciousness of the planet is a category 1. And when the dominant, like the collective consciousness shifts, then the category is reestablished. So although there are many people who are living in different categories, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, as you said, masters and monks and teachers, they're not contributing, they're not a part of the dominant. So I found that really interesting. And then they also said that these people, the people that are talking about moving into the 5th dimension, so there is only a very small percentage of people actually talking about that. As I said, it's not on the mainstream media because their influence is for people in different categories. Fascinating. Thanks for clearing that up, guys. So there's a great question here from Diane that says, have the Thiaoubans in any way contacted Samuel and tried to make contact with you, invited them to make, have you invited them to make contact? Seems like they would be aware of all his efforts to get their message out.
A lot of people ask me this question. You know, I'm a very independent person. The way I learn most from my lifetime, from my life lessons, is to really be more independent without outside assistance, unless when it is absolutely necessary. So I'll use an analogy. If you are a parent trying to teach your child a mathematical problem, how to solve a certain problem, then you'll be the best way for your child to learn if you just give the general directions and ask your child to explore on his or her own to solve the problem. If you just give him or her the answers, then he or she wouldn't be able to learn it more effectively. So I learned the best from my own efforts. So so far they haven't contacted me yet, and I think they're respecting my my own opinion or suggestions, that giving me an opportunity.
Well, I hate to burst your bubble because I'm chatting to them now. So I have, after reading the book, I have reached out to sort of talk to them, and I have them here with me now. They're coming as a group collective. They don't come as individuals. So in the book, we've got Michel talking to a physical being who's an individual, who has a personality, identity, body, and he's relating through that idea. How I'm relating to them now is not like that. And I think that I expected to relate more like that because I was reading in the book. What they're showing me now is they come as a group collective, like a group of people that are sending information. And they said that they've been inspiring you and talking to you for years. They're laughing at your you saying I'm a very independent person and I like to learn. They think that's hilarious. They think, who inspired you? What energy do you think inspired you to spend money that you didn't want to spend, to fly to Vietnam, to meet? They think it's hysterical that you think, oh yeah, that was just all me. They're laughing because they're saying, this is how we influence people. We give people suggestions which come in the form of impulses or desires or passions. And you as a, God, they're yakking now. God, they're off and running now. This is cool. You as an individual, as a human, as a soul incarnated into a human experience, you have free will and you have the choice at any stage to reject our suggestions that come in the form of impulses or desires or wants. You have at any time, you can say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to spend my money doing that. You know, I've got other things to spend my money on. You have at any time to do that, or you can follow that impulse. So they're laughing and saying they're talking to you all the time, Samuel.
I never reject their guidance or the impulses.
Oh, they're saying, no, you have absolutely rejected quite a few of the impulses that they've given you over the years. They're laughing at your and they're saying with love and compassion that this is what we all do. We're all guided and impulsed through our spiritual teams, not, you know, their collective, but through the spiritual teams that we have set up from a spiritual perspective. And we all get these desires and impulses. I was online with my group the other day talking about some psychic awareness and, you know, meet the spirit guides, and telling a story about when I was young. I was like 23. I drove a Vespa, a little moped, right? I was at my boyfriend's house and it was raining and I wanted to go home. And I said to him, can I take your car? Because I don't feel like getting on the bike and getting in the rain. Can I take your car? I'll bring it back in the morning. And he goes, sure. And I drove past my bike and I had this really, really, really strong guidance impulse to get on the bike and drive it home. And I argued and said, no, I don't want to do that. I don't feel like being on the bike tonight. It's cold, it's wet. I feel like being in a nice, comfortable car. So I rejected the impulse, even though it was so strong. And then my bike was stolen, although I did get it back. But, you know, and we get these impulses all the time from our guides and teams. And we have free will to reject them. And they said, they're laughing, and they said that you've rejected many of the ideas that they've given you, although they do applaud you and honor you for the ones that you haven't rejected, and honor you for the work that you're doing, spreading the message. Oh, it makes me want to cry. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good question, Diane. Yeah, great.
Thank you.
So what have we got? What's happening here, Kristen? Are there bodies that are manufactured close to what is cloning on Earth? That's a good question. Are the bodies that are manufactured close to what? Yeah, that's a good question. Samuel is so intellectually gifted. He is spiritually gifted, or learned any spiritual or mystic modalities. Oh, yeah. So Kristen, two questions. Are the bodies that they manufacture similar to what is cloning? What do you think about that? Again, a question for Tao. What do you think about that?
Well, I think the body that they manufactured you can use the word clone, Jesus, was actually something that's made by the great Torah, the seven masters on Thiaoouba. They can actually make a physical body, not really by cloning, because when you clone, you have to take the DNA, you have to really start from the embryo and to do that. But what they're talking about is to make a physical body of an adult human being, like a adult, like a 20-year-old or 30-year-old Jesus. So they're actually making that body, not necessarily in the sense of cloning, because we are kind of primitive in a sense that we have to use the DNA to do that, but they're far more advanced than us, and they don't need that.
So I asked that same question, Kristen, and they're showing me, they're saying that unlike we do on Earth in a test tube, they're actually manipulating the molecular structure. So they're talking about electrons. They're developing it more from an atomic quantum perspective, whereas we develop from a physical perspective. We're looking down a microscope, looking at cells, and but they're using it more from the atomic structure. So they're showing me the process, and it's kind of like, it looks like, oh my God, it kind of looks like something out of a sci-fi novel, where there's all this energy moving and swirling like a kind of like a pretty tornado, but not big, like small, and they're manipulating. It's like 3D printing, but they're 3D printing with energy. Yeah, it's really fascinating. Yeah, so the second question was, do you have any learned spiritual or mystic modalities?
Well, I think my main life purpose here is to really wake people up. You know,
Yeah.
I'm a Chinese American here, and I do interact with people in my field who just reject anything spiritual and anything
yeah.
related to spirituality. And I'm hoping to wake those people up, even though they follow the mainstream media and they do a lot of things that I think are kind of short-sighted. For me, when I need help, I do this. I concentrate and I meditate and I concentrate in front of 9 lit candles. Why 9? Because 9 is a magical spiritual number.
9.
And it's actually, yes, 9 candles.
9 candles.
And I look for knowledge, wisdom, love, and compassion. So I look for the 4 things, and I seek for guidance from my higher self. And speaking of higher self, I'd like to try to explain a rather difficult concept that Michel Desmarquet mentioned in a public lecture that can answer your question regarding the supernatural abilities of certain people on Earth. So, as we know, higher self is actually composed of electrons, and this is more scientific based. On category 1 planet, a higher self distributes the electrons to 9 different people. On category 2 planet, the higher self distributes the electrons into 8 different people. So up until category 9 planet, in which the higher self doesn't distribute the electrons to anyone else but the person, him or herself. So that's why if you have more electrons, you have more psychic powers or supernatural abilities. So this is why some people on Earth, that they have more electrons from the higher self, so that they're able to perform miracles more easily than others. They sometimes do that by practice, by meditation or concentration. And sometimes like the people in high degrees from secret societies, they do that by taking the life energy out of a live person illegally and cruelly. So there are different ways to do that. But the secret society members, the members of the secret society, they're going to regret what they did to the live people, because when they go through the life reveal process after they die, they're going to witness everything they did in the lifetime, and they're going to feel the feelings of themselves and also the others who took on the cruelties that they did. So they're going to feel everything is like a holographic environment, a film in which they would feel how the other people felt when they did certain things onto the others. And they're going to evaluate how they did in their lifetime. They're going to regret how they did it. So I hope this makes some sense, that the electrons control, the amount of electrons control the supernatural or psychic abilities a person has.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. That's a great explanation. So Anne says, maybe Samuel is from their planet. What do you think, Samuel? Do you think you're from Thiaoouba? Thiaoouba?
You know, it's a mystery. I don't know.
Well, I can tell you because I asked. They said no, that you're not from their planet, but that your soul has spent time on a higher, on other planets that are a different category. Yeah, but yeah, and that they're just saying that you elected before you were even born to spread the message. Yeah, this is like a long agreement that you've had with them. And they're saying many other people on Earth who are a part of the shift have made that agreement with their spirit guides and highly evolved beings on other planets, that they would come and bring a message and spread this knowledge to help awaken humanity. But oh God, their energy is so beautiful. Oh my God, I want you all to try and tune into them. Just imagine that you can and just feel their energy. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. I remember reading somewhere else, when 30% are awake, it's a wave of change that can change the category by waking up. Yeah, Anne. Yeah, absolutely. There is a critical mass when my guides have actually said to me, it's less than 5% of humanity. When less than 5% of humanity awakens to a specific level of consciousness, then that will like move through the consciousness and the minds of everyone and wake up everyone. But they said, this is not people intellectually having this discussion and talking about it. This is not knowing this information because you read it in a book or you watch podcast shows. This is living it. This is embodying that consciousness. And the guides are saying that it's getting close. Like there are, which if you think about 5% of the planet, if there's like 8 billion people on the planet, I don't know, do the math. You're the scientist, you're the mathematician, Samuel. That's a lot of people. Like that's a lot of people. 5% is a lot of people. Hundreds of millions of people, but it's not hundreds of people watching YouTube, podcasts or listening to podcasts. It's hundreds of millions of people living this unity consciousness. Yeah, so it's less than 30%. Any other questions? Can we reach out to them in meditation? Yes, absolutely. Someone has made a donation on YouTube. Homo Galacticus. Oh, thank you, Homo Galacticus. Thanks, Kristen, for letting me know. Michelle, I was curious about the comment about astrology and the stars. When the question was asked by Michelle, Teo just smiled. Do you have any further insights, Samuel?
Yes, I do. So Michel Desmarquet wrote 2 other books. One is Nature's Revenge. In that book, he talks about astrology. I'm going to try to explain to see if it makes sense. Is that the planets indeed affect the electrons. And when a person is born, the person gets about 81% of the electrons from the higher self, and the other 19% from nature. And what happens is that the locations of planets, through their kind of electromagnetic effect, they affect the 19% of electrons that goes into the human body, the human's astral body. So it doesn't really have the direct relationship with the different, like the astrology signs like Cancer or Gemini or something like that, but it does have something to do with the locations of the stars and planets in the universe that cause certain patterns to show up, reflected in a person's personality or kind of like human fate in the future, something like that. It's a very interesting concept. So astrology works, but only to a certain extent, affecting the 19% of electrons that's made up in the astral body of a person.
Excellent. Did that answer your question, Michelle? Either unmute and speak or pop it in the chat here. There's another question from Homo Galacticus. I love your name. She said, I'm so happy. I think it's a she. I'm so happy to see Samuel on your show, Karen. Again, is it possible that we know planet Thiaoouba under some other name? Much love from Brisbane, another Aussie. Do you think that in information in the past, it's been called something else? What do you think, Samuel?
Jehovah.
Jehovah.
Yeah, it's actually mentioned many times in the Bible.
The planet itself is mentioned as Jehovah, is it?
Yes.
And do you think it's part of the Palladian system? Because, you know, the original people that we call Aboriginals, the First Nations peoples of Australia, say that they were seeded, they claim that they were the first on Earth and that they came from the Pallades system.
You know, I want to find out the source of the information. I'm so afraid it's going to become like another Mayan calendar thing. So I want to find out the source of the information and to see if there are any verifiable facts that can validate such information. I do believe that the Palladian as a star system, constellation system that has life forms, but I doubt that they're the people that seeded us. But I do think there are blonde and beautiful Palladians existed in the universe, and possibly in the Palladian system, but in the sense that they seeded us, I think that should be more carefully scrutinized.
It's interesting. One of the people I've had on the show about 8 times, Garnet Schulhauser, who's written 5, how many books has Garnet written now? Books, because his spirit guide takes him in his astral body, flies him around the universe and shows him all this information, asks him to write it all down. And those books are mind-blowing too, my favorite books. I think in one of the first books that he wrote during his astral travels, either book 3 or 2, 3 or 4, anyway, he was taken to a planet that was run by, he said the beings looked like they looked like spiders. He said that's the closest he could come, like spidery beings, and they lived underground on this planet, and their job in the cosmos was seeding life on other planets. So life being not just, you know, human type lives, but I would say plants and animals and life on planets. That was interesting. So I think there's a lot more going on than one story, and the Palladians didn't seed their consciousness on Earth. They were like overseers, like the Thiaoubans say. They oversaw what was happening and helping out people that were like moving to different planets.
Again, I'd like to go back to my own logical thinking, which is that I'm a person really hard to be convinced of certain things. I need to look at the evidence. I mean, for channeled information, channeled messages are like that. I used to read a lot of channeled messages, hoping to find information that's going to be useful and helpful for us, for our future. A lot of the channeled information are so general. They, to me, seem to belong to fantasies or science fictions, unless they can specifically mention certain facts on Earth that we can look into and verify. For example, a lot of channeled information or messages say this and that, we're all one, which are really nice messages. But in order for me, like Samuel Chong, to be convinced, I have to see more evidence, more facts, specific verifiable facts, such as Thiaoouba Prophecy. It says blue light has antibacterial, antiviral effects. Things like if you go to the Galapagos Islands, is actually formed by an asteroid hitting Earth. Something like that we can really verify with something we can see, we can touch, and something exists in reality. So this is just me personally. I have to scrutinize the information very carefully.
Fair enough. Yeah, we all do it our own ways. Or you can just ask your spirit guides, is what I do. Lynn has an interesting question here about GMO foods being dead foods and no energetic response or nutrition. What about cloned people or those created there? What's the question, Lynn? Where are you? Do you want to ask it? I don't really understand the question. I don't know where the food and the cloned people come together. Do you want to unmute and ask that question? No? Are you there? No. All right. I don't really understand.
I'm here.
Yep.
Can you hear me? So the question is that genetically modified stuff that's made in labs, we're told don't eat it, or it's modified, or don't eat the food like the vegan food that's made in labs. It's got no life force and no energy force to give our life body, our energetic body, nutrition. If a person's made in a lab and it's cloned, what about their life force? Do they have it? Are they in connection? Is there a positive and negative charge? How's their electrical being and their essence created?
So Lynn, have you read the book?
I've read half the book.
Explains in the later half of the book, which is that a human being has 9 different bodies, like a physical body, the astral body, the astrotypical body, the physiological body, and a total of 9 different bodies. If a person is cloned, if there's no astral body getting into the physical body, then it just becomes like a robot. I don't think our current clone technology has the ability to really incorporate the other 8 bodies into the cloned body. So if they try to clone, or maybe some electrons will be split into half and half. So I would say that it would be very difficult to have the cloned people to resemble the spiritual levels of the person being cloned. Regarding the GMO, genetic modified food, and I think you're absolutely right. They don't have the sufficient energy comparable to a naturally grown food, organic food, in the sense that is genetically modified. If everything is distorted, then it really doesn't have the full energy force of nature. And there are other issues with the GMO food, such as chemical fertilizer residues or pesticide residues. And also it harms us internally as well. But it also brings up another interesting topic, is the secret government programs that try to clone people. And for that, I do think it exists. And people should really be careful at distinguishing the real ETs and the secret government programs that try to imitate the ET technologies. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Did that answer the question, Honeyone?
I think it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Thanks
interesting
for
because I've learned that we've got 12 bodies, not the 9.
from
So,
different
spiritual teachers.
spiritual
that the 9
teachers.
Yeah.
is
What the
and-
guides are saying is they laugh at how we try and categorize everything numerologically, because when you're trying to look at energy, it's like dimensions. We try and categorize. There is a blur point where you're moving from one dimension. There's no like rigid line that this is this. There is like, it's all energy, and you're moving in frequency. And it's like saying how many radio stations in a radio. It depends on what the radio can pick up. It's like, it's blurry. Yeah, it just depends on what the intention of the soul and the body and the incarnation. It all depends. Okay, so we're coming to the end. Lulu Bubble on YouTube says the book is really good. Kristen says the book's really good. It is a good book. It's another one like Garnett's books blew my mind. This one blew my mind too. It just answers a lot of questions that we have about who we are. But as we wrap up, what do you think the major message for people reading it and for our personal lives is in the book? Samuel? I mean, what have you taken out of it, the message in the book, apart from all the stuff that we've talked about, like dimensions and categories and miracles and stuff like that? Like, what's the message of the book that humanity really needs to take on that will help us personally and collectively?
I think it really depends on the people, different groups of people in the spiritual field. They probably have certain messages, and people in different, like the legal and medical field, they have other messages. But I think the most important thing is to look inside of yourself. The kingdom of God is within you. Follow your heart, your intuition, your gut feelings, and to keeping constant communications with your higher self through meditation, by having a good night of sleep, and also to try your best to live a full life, wake others up, and to realize what's really going on in our real world. And I think that message is key. And also regarding how to make the right change, read the chapter in which Michel Desmarquet met Archie, the ET from a different planet. And I think that's going to be extremely practical and inspirational for our current circumstances.
Do you want to just go over what that chapter is about? What did Archie look like again? He was kind of short and ugly looking, wasn't he? But he had a message about what happened on his planet, right?
Yes. On the planet Thiaoouba, the Thiaoubans took great efforts inviting ET from a different planet to meet with Michel Desmarquet. Archie was that person, and he is really short and kind of like square-like, heavy and very strange looking person that seems to be a little bit ugly according to Michel's aesthetic taste. And he told Michel Desmarquet that a few decades ago, their planet went through a revolution in which it only took about 4 people to protest against the totalitarian government regime. The 4 people protested in front of the palace of the government for 7 days, fasting and preaching spirituality and love. And the government of that country shot the 4 people, and the 4 people died, 3 males and 1 female. A few months later, everyone realized the importance of the preachings or teachings of the 4 people, and everyone rose up against the totalitarian government in having a unified countrywide strike. The policemen also joined in, and it's a very detailed description how the country changed afterwards. Everything turned out to be better, and it became an example of a country moving from really like a tyranny into a more equalized communal society. So I think they took great pains to invite Archie to meet with Michel Desmarquet, and Archie died on his way back to their planet. And I think this is a very important passage or message to us that we should also follow suit.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that part. Yeah. Yes, it speaks about the power of the people, not the power of the people that think they're in power. I mean, they call them the elite, the 1%, and there are a very small elite group of people in power with a lot of money that are seemingly making the rules for humanity, as we've seen roll out over the last few years. And yet there are billions, of us that if we don't like it, we have a say. But the controlling minority would like us to believe we don't have a say and we don't have power. And I don't think our power is in being angry at what's happening, which is like the message that Aki said, you know, the revolution, because there have been a lot of people revolting. I mean, there have been mass demonstrations all over the world, including China. Is that making a difference to government policy at the moment? No. Will it? I don't know. But as the guides say through the Abraham material, one person connected to the stream of pure positive energy, which is the stream of your own soul, which is the stream of consciousness that comes from your own higher self, is more influential than a million who are not. So we have the power to change things through love and not through resistance, but we do have the power to change things. And it is that message, I think, that the book demonstrates and that you talk about. It is the evolution of our spiritual practice. It is when we raise our vibration and evolve our own consciousness, we have unbelievable powers. Like they have evolved their consciousness. They live in a physical environment, and yet they have the ability to heal, to manufacture bodies, you know, through the power of mind and working with the elements and the electrons. They have the power to levitate. They have many powers that we would seem like miracles, as Jesus demonstrated, walking on water. Well, walking on water is them, you know, using their levitation powers, right? So as you said, Samuel, people can do that. People can levitate by using the power of their consciousness and raising their vibration and having more of a connection to their soul's frequency, or that frequency of pure positive energy. So yeah, we are powerful. Thank you so much, Gloria says. Must take off, Dog Frankie. Thank you so much. Anne says, yes, we are powerful. And I think the message in the book does demonstrate that, yeah, with the power of concentration, as you said, and our spiritual journey, we can create anything we want to create, including changing, shifting this world from tyranny. What does he call it in the book? The planet of sorrows?
Yes, the planet of sorrows.
Yeah, moving this planet from a planet of sorrows to a thriving planet, as Foster Gamble says from the documentary Thrive. And I think that taking our focus off our own personal needs and being more collectively focused, I think is a powerful thing, because humans are so focused on self. What do I, me, what do I get? What do I need? Me. Like I would call it the planet of me instead of the planet of we. I would say shifting our focus from the me to the we, and that will definitely evolve us. What do you say, Samuel?
Yes, through non-violent resistance. Non-violent resistance is a key word.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for coming and talking with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you, Kristen, for helping me out today with the messages and Restream. We hardly had anyone ask anything on. We had a couple of donations, and thank you so much. Lulu Bubble, the book's really good. Violet, thank you. I agree with you 1000%. So we only had a couple of, and we had no one commenting on Facebook, which I thought was interesting. I don't know if Facebook's showing any of my stuff anymore to anybody. I've got it streaming on 3 different Facebook platforms, 3 groups, and my profile and a page. And yet I don't seem to have had any comments on Facebook. But we've had lots of comments from the people on Zoom. Thank you, everybody who has been on Zoom with us today. And any final messages before we go off the live, Samuel?
Yeah, I would strongly suggest people to read the book in detail, because what we have been talking about so far in the last 2 hours is only about maybe 10% of the book. There
Absolutely.
are additional 90% that's going to benefit you, your friends, and your family members. And reading this book is the best investment I ever made in my entire life. Remember, I studied the financial markets. When I say this book is the best investment I have ever made in my lifetime, you're going to see the value of the book.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. iPhone says, thank you, Samuel, so much. Fascinating. And shifting focus from me to we and nonviolent resistance, as you both said. Thank you. Diane. Oh, that's Diane W, who's on iPhone. Right. Thank you again, Samuel. Let me just put myself back on screen. Here we are. Yeah, thank you again. I'm just going to go off the live stream and we'll have a bit of a chat with the group. So thanks everyone that's been watching to the live stream, and I'll catch you soon. Catch you next time.